Okay, our next presentation will be from Presant and Stella Porto, and it will be beyond micro-credentials, which is very interesting because this morning, Don was representing the micro-credentials, so there is life beyond micro-credentials.
Forget about that. That
I've
was all
learned.
fake.
I've learned.
Oh, you're a quick learner. Brilliant. So you change your presentation between this morning and...
It's part of our
Brilliant.
long-going fight.
My company's learning agents, our slogan is, we may not be smart, but we're learning. So, okay. So thanks, everyone. Very honored to be here with Stella on the stage talking about the IDB credential framework. We're going to do a little sort of back and forth, and I think Stella will kick off, and we'll pick up further. So the agenda for today would be explaining why we're doing this, as sort of an overview of the content of it, and then the next steps that we're going to be taking with it. This is coming from an emergent practice, an existing practice, and principles emerging from that existing practice. So Stella will first talk about the Inter-American Development Bank.
You know, for some of you who were this morning, I'm not going to repeat too much, but maybe there are people that weren't here in the morning. So, so the bank is an international organization with various member countries, and the borrowing countries are all in Latin America and the Caribbean. So the focus is financing development projects in that region. So the area that I work in is the knowledge, innovation, communications, but basically in the unit that does learning. So in that unit, what we do is the various sectors of the bank actually are our clients, and we help them design and deliver online capacity building opportunities for those in the region, covering topics that are the focus of those different sectors that I just mentioned. So Academia BID is actually a branding, it's not a unit. This is kind of recent, this wording. You can either call it BID Academy or Academia BID. And basically it's a branding that covers not only the courses that we deliver through various platforms, so we have relationships with edX, with Coursera, and also we run a Moodle platform, but also the bank produces data, and that is data that is shared openly. We have other initiatives in the knowledge area, for example, working with startups in the region, building software that is also shared. So not only learning, but various areas of knowledge, and all that is under this umbrella of BID Academy. So Credenciales BID is basically the name that we have given to our area that is using digital badges since 2018, and more recently using Open Badge Factory. So the interesting part about these credentials is that most of them are still related to completion of courses, but more and more we are seeing demand for using credentials in other ways. One of them is the one I explained this morning, that was this community-based, the IDB initiative. But there are other various initiatives happening, and this diversity of needs is actually what brought us to start thinking about a framework that we're going to talk to you today.
So, some elements of why the framework, you can speak to them here too.
So for the need, actually, I had the need, basically, and I convinced people, yeah, we need to have this. But why do I need it, and where are the challenges? So when I talk to my clients, right, their focus is not on badges, right? They want the badge to do something for them. So that conversation becomes always, I have to start from scratch, right, and understand their needs, and then tell them, okay, this is the best way to create your badge. Since the operations of Credenciales BID is a centralized operation, I needed a lot of tools that would help me in my dialogue with creators to give them something so they don't have to understand everything that I understand about badges and just get to where they want, right? So another element of this diversity is that badges, to me at least, or for where I come from, the quality of the badge is the quality of the metadata. It's how much I explain about what that badge is doing, what that earner has done to receive that badge, or the best way that the earner can show what they can do or what they have learned, right? So it's the quality of the metadata. So in looking at this diversity, we were looking for a framework that would help us develop templates in the end that establish exactly how to create that badge with all the needed information and make the differentiations all the way from badges that are participation in webinars, all the way to, for example, we have challenge badges that are related to coding, for example, completely different. The kind of information that you want in that badge is completely different than one that is related to a webinar. So we wanted to have these things all laid out so when I understand the need, I can go to this client and say, here's what you need to provide me, and here's the best way to get where you want to be. So I didn't read anything that is here.
Okay.
I said what I
said in parallel.
I'm very bad with the slides,
you filled in the gaps.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take this next one and just basically to say that it wasn't just internal needs. We wanted to align it to stuff that's already out there. So
Right.
you're going to recognize some things. Some people might recognize themselves in this picture. A lot of the structure of it would come from the center top there, the academic frameworks that are out there. But we also wanted to leverage what's happening, like the affordances of the open badge system. Look at what's happening out, that ISO 26000. I'm thankful to Philippe for that, actually. That's a social responsibility that can be used for corporate social responsibility. We've mentioned the Bologna Open Recognition Declaration, which itself leveraged off the Cape Town Declaration. And Nan, you're there too. So there we go.
So one point I think about this is that when we started talking about this framework, it made no sense for us to say, oh, we're going to do this, something that fits IDB. It made sense to look at what is out there, what has been, lots of things from eCampus Ontario, the principles, we looked at all that. And if they're there, I don't have to have one more person reinventing principles, right? So I think that is important, but it also is a buy-in for me internally, because now I talk about this framework and say, I didn't just wake up and say, oh, here's a framework. It's based on all these other things. One of the questions that we got when we first talked to the people internally, the first question is, what is the World Bank doing? That's all they were worried about. Yeah. But since nothing was coming from that area, it is important to have these solid, create your framework with solid
There's actually
pillars.
a book that kind of cites the World Bank. We stuck that in for the internal audience. The other interesting thing is Principles of Digital Development, which is worth a look because a lot of it's do no harm, sign on to this. It's a little BORD-like, actually, I must say. So the framework itself, across the top here, basically this would be a table of contents, sort of a rough overview of the table of contents. So there's a manifesto, they love that word, inside the IDB, sort of stating what are the principles, why are we doing this? And then there's this badge taxonomy, which is part of the ongoing sort of tool set going forward. The detailed elements of it, which we don't have time to get into the weeds about, but we can show you if you're interested.
And it's going to be published?
Yes. When?
It all depends on you, Don.
Okay, oh yeah, there we go. So I should say I'm wearing my consulting hat for this one, not my advocate hat. So, and then critical information summaries. So Dominic here contributed to some of that, which was why he was going to be the original micro-credential victim. We think that's a great thing, even though we don't want to use the word micro-credential too much, and then obviously appendices. And then supports that would be external to this. So in other words, where does this fit within Academia BID, the wider IDB group and IDB wanting to be a leader in the region? How does this fit into quality principles and standards?
And maybe there's, related to that, I think there's one point that I haven't mentioned. One of the, when we started the entire badging initiative within the bank, we had one goal that was, okay, we do all this learning, we want to have, we're not a university, that was the first thing. We want to be able to issue some recognition, right? But I think that one of the most impactful, I think, goals that we have, and we are doing this by becoming an issuer, is that we can impact the region also in changing, helping change the way credentialing happens in the region through influence and policy and so forth. So not only, walking the talk and showing how you do it, but also in some cases being the venue to actually help the region. So I'll give you an example for that. An organization in Peru that is training, that is related to the public sector and is training their people, they're a smaller training unit. They don't need to do all this. We open up our own platform and our passport and et cetera, and through us, they do the issuing. So that is a way not only to help them change their minds, but also give them, real concrete ways to do things differently. Great. There you go.
So a lovely map of the area that we're talking about. And this is, we're just going to dive a little bit into some of the details and say this is the manifesto part. So there's a section where we say, what is our mission? Well, we start with IDB and what it does and how it's related to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Talk about core values that relate to policy and how that plays out. And then the notions of digital development that I mentioned, the ISO 26000. And then where do we want this to go? What are the goals? Well, we want empowered learners and learning organizations. So some of this, Serge, you recognize some of your own phraseology here, hopefully. And then the idea of well, this was when I slipped in, the idea of a development learning region. So in other words, building off the idea of a learning city, you can have learning regions. So, and then I've mentioned the other ones down there, the principles of the UNESCO, the recommendation on adult learning, the Cape Town, and then BORD is in our IDB framework. So Stella, maybe you want to talk about some of the framing sections here? Just how we frame things.
So actually I think this framework is an example of where the micro-credentials and the open badges have their lunch on chicken lunch on Sunday,
chicken
right?
lunch, right, okay.
Because I think all these elements in different nuances, they play a role in in the taxonomy, right, that comes out of this. So these are the elements that we use to then build the different kinds of badges that represent our whole universe of badges. So we're talking about, the definitions and terminology, formality. So you're going to find a spectrum of formality in there. That's why I say it's the chicken lunch on Sunday. So you have all the way from participation badges all the way to courses that have real assessment. Some of these assessments, like on the job kind of assessments. You have one of the things that the way we were set up is that IDB is an issuer of badges, but you have multiple creators of badges. So actually, some of the things that are coming in the 3.0 standard are going to be great because these things are not identified now, but will be identified later on. And things that are part of open badges, verifiability, integrity, transparency, clarity, all of that is, and part of this element of transparency and clarity is related to understanding that the badges come from different sectors, and it will allow, for example, to align to competencies that might come from that sector and not necessarily all the badges that are being issued.
So this is a framework that we've come up with, and it was based somewhat on one that was developed for Atingi before. Spectrum of formality, as we've spoken of, so you would have your performance badge, which you might think of that as could be a decoupled certification or a program-based certification. This person can now do this role, can perform these tasks, or it could just be course-based, which would be outcomes-based. But you could also have, this is an awareness thing, maybe with some 4 or 5 knowledge checks. You can bang at it until you get it, and okay, that's great, that's an element. Could be you were part of a webinar. Quite a few webinars are delivered, and that's actually one of the great ways they have to drive it. The idea of the milestone badge or the stacked badge. Flexible recognition, where I like to say that's where the magic happens, that's where emergence happens. Stella was talking this morning about the community professional badge, and then also the idea of an organization badge, and that's just step one. We'd like to have other types of organization badges, and better ways of doing it, more robust ways of doing it, I think would be great.
Yeah, and talking about this organization badge, so the bank is very into partnering with other organizations. It could be universities or agencies in different countries, and they all come, they sign all these papers, they do large agreements, right? And that's where it's hidden, the partnership. So the idea is that instead of them saying, oh, now that I have signed these papers, can I have the IDB logo on my website? Instead of having the IDB logo, you actually issue a badge where this badge describes the kind of collaboration that you have with the bank. And not only that, you might have evidence that grows into telling the story of the collaboration. And I think that brings 2 things. One is that the paper is more than just a paper. And it also pushes these partners to doing something and not just, oh, I have the paper signed, but I'm actually, here's where I show that I have a collaboration with you. So it's a very interesting way of bringing this whole concept of open badges to a totally different area, completely outside of capacity building, and really meshing it into everything that we do at the bank. That's my, my power grab plan.
Great. So critical information summary, we're kind of running out of time here. So I just want to establish that it's an emergent practice. There are about 5 or 6 of them out there. Very few of them even mention open badges. I can't think of one that actually specifically mentions it. So what we've done is explicitly say these are the affordances that come from open badges. These are the fields you have to fill in because it's an open badge. Mm-hmm. These are the fields you might want to fill in. These ones are recommended. These ones are simply optional. And the way it gets used, it folds into the requirements worksheets, the badge requirements worksheets that go out there that are primarily differentiated by how they approach criteria, right? So what's the assessment? What's the rigor of the assessment? How big is the credential, et cetera? So even within the criteria, we have like a structured mini capsule within the badge. Who's this? So this is me talking through how this would work. They fill in the credential framework guides the requirements document. They submit it to the Credentialis bid team who examine it. If it passes, then they upload those badges, whichever type of badge, and those are issued through the various means of academia bid and other forms of learning and development, of which many are emergent. Those badges fold into the Credentialis bid passport. and of course can be shared externally, but increasingly shared internally in spaces that will be an emergent area. They can import external badges. They can issue self-peer badges to them. That's been some of the webinars they've been doing, is experimenting with that. And then IDB as employer and other employers, this is more emergent that we expect to come, and other ways of sharing even beyond the credentialities bid framework. So this is, anybody who was at the ePIC in 2015 might remember a rather convoluted diagram I had back then. This is today's version of it. And
one thing we didn't say is that we're issuing badges for the capacity building that we do to the region, but also this year, everything that we had in terms of corporate compliance, a decision was made that everything also would be part of this. So now, besides this external audience, there is the internal audience that is in this. And this is important because that's where you connect, that's where you make the people that work for IDB also be part, that they're also part of the audience, right? And that they're there together in the same space.
so that's it, no questions. No time, thank you.
Maybe one question. One?
Well, you're the boss.
Are you stretching? Or is it? Yeah. I thought you were stretching.
I was stretching now so that I could ask a question. So the framework and the templates that you are developing. So the frameworks and maybe more the templates that you're developing, are you thinking about making that those available, opening up so that they can be leveraged by other organizations? Sure.
Yeah. So if you look at the way it's written now, you wouldn't deploy it as it is because there are some, for example, one part of the requirements, there's one field that is optional that is related to our sectors, right? But this is, all of our learning is usually under Creative Commons. So this will also be in that way, published in that way. Yeah. We have a whole library, actually. The bank has a whole area that is library, and things are formally published under the Creative Commons.
And just to say that this is a sort of a marriage of something we were already doing on the CanCred platform, where we'll copy in badges as templates to people. The difference is they're putting them out as Word templates because they're the ones that upload the badges, and that's why it's done that way.
Right. So the operations, the way we're doing is really related to how we do the governance of the process, right? So we have the operations very centralized, meaning who touches Open Badge Factory? Just a very small number of people. We don't, because our creators are not in that business. It doesn't interest them to be doing that. So we just offer the tool and how they communicate what they want in there.
You have more questions, there is a coffee break, and you're welcome to meet our presenters.